Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Romance Class podcast. Romance Class is a community of Filipino authors of romance in English. Since 2013, our community has helped over 80 authors publish over 100 books. We also have a podcast, which is what you're watching or listening to now, and it has been a space to explore more of what we can do with the books and what we can discuss with the authors. This podcast is produced by Tanya Arpa and Mina V. Esguerra and is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Before we start, we would like to remind everyone to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Head over to kilig.pub/YouTube. Hit the subscribe button and also click on the bell to be notified when a new video is coming up. My name is Mina V. Esguerra and I'm hosting the episode today. Our episode is about the Philippines, but the parts of the Philippines that are not Manila, as settings of our romance novels. If you're not familiar with the reputation and reception of romance in English in the Philippines, the short recap is that this type of book is marketed as modern and contemporary and also became associated with city living, specifically city living in the National Capital Region. In classroom and literary discussions of contemporary romance by Filipino authors with Filipino characters, someone would inevitably say, but aren't these books just too Manila centric? When they're just about one city, what relevance does it have for the rest of the nation? Well, many of these books really are set in Manila, but they don't have to be. Why is the genre associated with Manila? Because the publishers were there, and maybe to be marketable as modern and contemporary, some people assumed that the characters had to be Manila people. When most of what is published is like this, and the aspiring authors who read these books only ever get to see romance like this, then we have a cycle. In writing workshops, I'm told over and over that Filipino authors of fiction of various genres feel that they have to set their stories in NCR. It's a cycle that we don't have to perpetuate. At Romance Class, we've told authors, by all means, please highlight other places in the Philippines in your books. You'll find books by Romance Class authors set in La Union, Laguna, Batangas, Zambales. The Prom the Heart anthology, for example, features short stories set in different provinces all over the country. Clarice David's young adult books are set in Iloilo, but there are more, and there can be more. Let's talk about all of that today. I know many of our readers who are in the Philippines have all of these connections to all our places as well. If you're in the chat, please let us know all the places in the Philippines that you've lived in. Where are you from? Where do you want to be? I want us to have all of these places in the top of our minds, and I hope that we can encourage you to believe that where you are is a great setting for a romance story that we can love. To help us out, we have a panel today of authors who will tell us about them writing their stories in settings beyond Manila. Let's welcome Chris Mariano and CP Santi. Hi! I will be calling CP Santi Karin for for the duration of this program. So hello. So before
Hello.
before I
Hi.
ask them to introduce themselves, I will just say that my background is the Nagsasa Cove in Zambales. Nakikiuso lang ako. I have written books all over Manila. So I will be sitting down today and letting Chris and Corinne talk about other places where our books can be set. So please, if you're in the chat, please let us know where you are, where you're from, where your family's from. Let's talk about all the other places in the Philippines today. How about some introductions? Let's start with Chris.
Hi, mayad-ayat nga adlaw kayong tanan. My name is Chris Mariano, and I'm a romance class author, born and raised in Manila, but Aklanon at heart. And I say that because I was raised by Aklanons in Aklanon. And this is why I try to bring those into my books. My book Cover Story Girl is set in Boracay, Aklan, while my short story Drummer Boy, which appears in the Prom the Heart anthology, is set in Calibo, Aklan. I co-edited Prom the Heart along with Ines Bautista Yao, and we wanted an anthology to gather stories from set outside of Manila. I have other non-romance class stories also set in Aklan. So I'm really, really pleased to be part of this podcast.
Thank you, Chris. Corinne, how about you? Introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. So, hi everyone. My name is Karen, and I apologize for my dogs. They also want to be part of this podcast. Anyway, my name is Karen, and I write a CP Santi, but yeah, please call me Karen. It's easier that way. So, I'm like Chris, I was born in Manila, I was raised in Manila. My background is basically my mom, especially when my grandparents were alive, we were in Pampanga almost every Saturday. And although my dad is from Bohol, I can understand Bolanon, but I cannot speak it. No, but I can understand a lot. So yeah, I'll survive there. But anyway, the reason why I write a lot of settings outside of Manila is because I'm an architect and I'm largely involved in the conservation of built heritage, and I'm also an academic. So I do research and I teach history, theory, and design. So my line of work really allows me, no, erase that. It forces me, no, I have no choice. It forces me to travel a lot, no? And so I guess I thought, hey, let's put all this travel to good use and use them as settings in books. And I'll be talking about some of those books today. So some of these these two are set. This one is set in Laguna, and this one is set in there's a story here that is set in Jimenez, Misamis Occidental. So I'm excited to talk to you about that today. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you also to Karen's dog for participating. Uh, your dog is a welcome addition to the podcast. Don't worry about
I am so sorry. Yeah, they're
that's
walang sa pansin.
totally
Sorry
fine.
about that.
So I will also share that I am from Laguna. So my family is mostly Laguna. We're Tagalog. I have never lived though anywhere outside of Manila, but we do visit our relatives in Laguna, in Los Baños, in San Pablo. So that's where we go when it's reunions and special occasions. But definitely yes. I would love to now start asking you about the books that you've written that are now part of like the Romance Class catalog of all of these books, because it's really interesting how once we started publishing these books and international readers can read them, a lot of them are experiencing the Philippines for the first time through our books. And I'm actually very glad that when they start reading, it's not necessarily going to be a Manila book that they read. So from the very beginning, for example, Cover Story Girl was from the very first class, like, and from the very beginning, when we started this, they didn't have to just read about people in Manila. So I would like to start with the first part of our program. What elements of setting and life did you make sure to include in your book? How about let's start with Chris?
Um, I think that some readers, even writers, kind of take setting for granted. It certainly appears that it's the less important element of fiction compared to plot or characters or theme, and I'm guilty of that as well. But I think that I try to pay closer attention to it, especially when I'm writing a book that's not set in Manila, and not because I want to romanticize the place, um, but more because I want my settings to have an authentic, lived-in feeling to them. If I can, if I my way of thinking is if I can kind of take my story and replace all the place markers, all the location markers with a setting from Manila, and it still works, then I didn't do a good job of establishing that setting, and I shouldn't have set that particular story in Aklan at all. So for my particular stories, for Cover Story Girl, for instance, I wanted to show the ordinariness, if you will, of Boracay by centering it on around a character whose work is primarily on the island. I guess if you could I mean, somebody can argue about the ordinariness of of somebody working in the tourism industry. but that's kind of beside the point. Gia's job was centered around an a nice little museum that I'm um I'm familiar with, and what I tried to do was to add some elements to it and make sure that there was this little piece of a marker of local history on an island. Tried to capture that. Another thing that I wanted to capture when I was writing about Boracay was, I know a lot of people go to Boracay for the nightlife just as much as they do for the beaches, and that's something that I'm familiar with myself. So I tried to draw from my own personal experiences when writing about that. For Drummer Boy, on the other hand, I focused on the Atiatian Festival, which is the 1 week in the entire year when Kalibo really comes alive. I love it, and I bring my friends to Kalibo during the Atiatian Festival. I know other cities and other towns have similar festivals, and maybe they've got grander costumes or grander parades, whereas Atiatihan is a little more come as you are, kind of like a street party vibe. And that's something that I tried to capture from the very first scene of that particular story, where the main character, Reina, shows up on the street just dressed in her pambahay. And another thing that I wanted to focus on with Drummer Boy was the drummers of the festival, and these can be groups and families that really put their hearts and souls into the whole festival. Things would be really different without them. They practice weeks, months in advance, and you can see entire generations, from young children to teenagers to their fathers and uncles. I don't see a lot of women, by the way, but this is why the story behind Drummer Boy also came about. But I guess most importantly, when it comes to what I want to capture, I really want to capture the feeling of a story that's set outside of Manila, and I'm talking about those wide open fields and your Capiz windows and your tricycles and your mangrove forests and your idyllic rivers. They don't have to be upfront in the story, but I just want to make sure that I get to capture that feeling, that sentiment, whenever I write something that's set outside of Manila.
Thank you, Chris. So we actually have pictures from Chris that we were flashing as she was speaking. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, you can head on over to YouTube so you can see what Chris was talking about. Chris, was there anything that you wanted to add sa photos? We can flash them again and you can sort of describe what's happening there. Can we have like Chris's photos, like the one in Aklan? Yeah.
This
So
is one of this is a photo of a one of the street corners in the capital, in Calibo, where people people the it becomes kind of like a it's less of a parade. It's really just a lot of people standing there because there's really no room to move. And I managed to get
this was before the pandemic, right?
this is way before the pandemic. Yes, and I'm actually scared of birds, but you can see a huge rooster, like right in the middle of my
Yes, there
little
there is a
parade.
huge rooster looking down at people right
It's
over there.
really hard to see a piece of empty street. You can see a couple of areas there, but really most of the crowds look like this. And this is not even the main festival. So this is something that I wanted to capture straight up at the beginning of the story. When Reina goes out in the street and she gets her foot trampled on, that's
So
really
it's
something
this
that
many
happens a lot.
people who trampling on her foot. Okay, got
Right.
it. And you seem to have captured also the other landmark of our country, Jollibee.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, the best.
Next photo.
This is a photo of the nightlife in Boracay. Not
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
I mean, at this point, there was a time when they didn't have a lot of like these tarps covering the
These are like
stages,
stages talaga, no? Like on the
right,
beach. Mm-mm.
on the beach. I've actually been to Boracay where the crowds are just like the first photo I showed, where there was like wall to wall of people. And this was not during the holiday season or sem break when everyone goes there. It was actually during in the middle of summer when there were so many events happening on one night. There was a huge rock festival. There was a an insert name of tuna company.
Right.
For the
Abs. Yeah.
like, yes, exactly. And
Showing
it was
having
just
people show abs. Yeah.
a
Okay.
flow of people, again, wall to wall of people in that tiny stretch of road. And then if you dared go out to the beach area, because that was, you'd think that had more room, you'd be wrong. And I did that on that particular night. That didn't make
Yeah.
into a book, but I did write a short story about it. The last couple of pictures I have, one shows a bunch of tricycles. So one particular tricycle, it has a chair. I think it's part of
Is
uh,
that they have
a
it has like so much
sorbetero.
stuff strapped
Exactly.
on it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
There's a wheel on top of the tricycle. There's a almost like a table strapped to the back of the tricycle, and I thought it was really interesting, and that was one of the pictures that I had snapped on the way to somewhere. The another photo that I'm showing right now is the this place is about 5 minutes from our home in Calibo. You can get there by trike. You can walk if you're adventurous enough. It's really not that hard. But it's you walk through about a kilometer or so of mangrove forests, and then you cross this little bridge and you see this uh, a, a little river across. So that's one of
It's
my favorite
amazing.
places.
Yeah, it's amazing and
It's,
I've never been. Because it's not exactly on the tourist path, right?
it is not. It is not. And this is why when my friends come and join us for ati-atihan, I would take them to places like this. Really something that a lot of people would. I wish a lot of people would come and see that there's more to Aklan, for instance, than its more popular beaches. But I also like how quiet and intimate it can be, and that whole vibe, that whole here's what's here's why this particular place is popular, but wait, my story will tell you a little more about what goes behind the scenes, and that's something that I really kind of want to put on the page whenever I'm writing about Aklan.
Thank you, Chris. Oh, next up. Oh, these are just windows, but they're a special
Right.
kind of window. Yeah.
Those are my copy's windows. That's actually the window from my room in Calibo. So
Wow. Uh-huh.
um, our house is pretty old, and we've got copy's windows. And this is what I see when I wake up. For three panel windows, and then for little windows that some of them don't even open anymore. But it's really nice and really kind of relaxing.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for sharing. So just to remind Karen of the question. It's what elements of setting in life did you make sure to include in your story? So, how about you, Karen? What were you able to include, and which parts of the Philippines were you able to include in your story?
All right. So As I said a while ago, I'm a Manilena, but because of my work, I get to travel a lot, and a lot of this work that I do necessitates that I talk to people. No, I talk to people. I'm in a place and I'm able to imbibe the culture for quite a while. No, it takes not only one trip but multiple trips. And it comes to a point that the people over there are saying, "Oh, you're our adopted daughter, Charot," parang something like that. No? And it's super heartwarming. But I love it when it happens, and I really believe that um, each place has its own distinct, very distinct character, and I try as much as possible to show that in the books. So the first time I wrote about a setting outside of Manila was in Sweeter by the Second, which is set in the historic town of Jimenez in Misamis Occidental. So Sweeter by the Second is a story in the book Maybe This Time, which is a collection of second chance romances. So in the story, Rina, who is a paintings conservator, participates in the facilitation of National Arts Month in Jimenez, and she is reunited with Tony, her ex, who is now the vice mayor of that town. So the photo that was flashed earlier, it was of it's one of the pegs that I was using for my book. This is the Osami's house in Jimenez, and this used to be the home of a former senator of the Philippines, and another nearby town is actually called Ozamis because of that. So this is one of the places that we visited because we actually did a built heritage mapping of Jimenez in for this project I did with them, and we were able to go to each of these houses, to go inside the houses and to talk to the owner. So the owner was still there. The daughter, one of the daughters, who is interestingly one of the first batch of PAL stewardesses. No? Flight attendant na ngayon, pero she was very proud. She was one of the first, and she was telling about her experience and, of course, the feeling of coming home to Jimenez every time after she had a stint in Manila, things like that. So I also talk a lot about the church, no, because that's exactly what I'm there for. I talk about the church. In This is me. This is actually in the belfry of the Church of San Juan Bautista in Jimenez, which is actually a national cultural treasure. And yeah, we had to, in my line of work, I have to go and inspect built heritage. So this entails climbing things up to the highest point and looking out. And when I saw this, no, the bells are actually just below. No, they're. Mina was asking that question. Can you know where are the bells if this is the belfry? The bells are below me, but this is like a platform, and then there's an oculus above that allows you to look out, and when you look out, you can see the layout of the entire town, and it's in this very beautiful classic quadricula pattern, which is more of a Spanish imposition, meaning just which means that the streets are in a grid pattern. So that is one of the things that I also um, show there. So another book that features a location outside of Manila is Dare to Love. No? So it's this book. And this is a story about a conservation architect who's not me. No, she's actually a single mom. So I wanted to explore kind of the feeling being a single mom in a small town. So this is in Laguna. No? And yeah, during one, this was taken, I think, only last year because this is in San Pablo, one of the restaurants there. I forgot what it was called, but it served really good food. But in the middle of lunch, I stood up and took a picture of my book, and the municipal tourism officer was like, "Ma'am, what are you doing?" But I said, "No, I wrote a book, and it's technically set in this town." And actually, when you read the book, I don't really mention which town in Laguna it's set in, because while I was writing it, I was envisioning another town. I was envisioning the town of Pila. which is also in Laguna. No, it's a historic town, and it's very nice because it has this assemblage of Spanish colonial houses, one of which Gia, the main protagonist, lives in. No, and what do you call this? But her line of work, she's a conservation architect. She's a consultant for the diocese of Laguna, and the diocese of Laguna is in San Pablo. So this is the church. Yeah, I also miss the outside world, and this is the church of I think Saint James the Hermit, and beside it you can see the convento. And this is very integral to the book because actually Gia comes from a family of priests. Now, her uncle is a priest, her brother is a priest, and they serve here. So I needed it to be nearer here. So it's the setting is like a cross between San Pablo and Pila. No, anyway, in the book, no, Gia comes home from a trip to Manila, no, and she comes home and literally finds an almost naked guy in her bed. Yeah. Wow, right? And in the book, I also mentioned Bohol, no, because of course the nature of the heroine's work, she's a conservation architect. I also mentioned Bohol, mainly because of the big earthquake that happened there in 2013. So this is a picture of me. Yeah, that's me. This is in Dawis in Bohol, and this was like 2 days after the earthquake happened in 2013. So a team of us from different cultural agencies were sent to do a rapid condition survey assessment. So this is actually mentioned in the story also. So I also mention, I talk a lot about conservation, and I talk a lot about how the agencies are involved and the kind of work that they do. And of course, I talk about food. Yes, this is also in Bohol. We were documenting Baclayon, and of course, at every church, you have to pay your respects to the parish priest. So you you literally go to the convento, Father, hi, we're here, we're gonna take photographs of your church, and of course they'll say, oh, come in, have something to eat, and yeah, so we're yeah, we're never hungry. There's always food. I think these are biscochos and really yummy things, no? And they're always very, very happy to receive guests and feed them. So yeah, the food is also a very big part of I think the narrative that we weave, no? So the last story that I wrote about outside Manila is only the beginning. It's part of the compilation Prom the Heart, which sadly I don't have a physical copy of right now, but um, it's also set in Jimenez. No, it's also set in Jimenez, and because I seriously love that town, the food, the people, the setting, I had to write about it again. So this features a fiesta, a small barangay fiesta in Jimenez. No, and I was so surprised because when we were doing the cultural mapping, the mayor suddenly said, "Oh, there's this fiesta I have to go to. You guys want to come along?" And so we loaded into her van, and it's actually very funny because it was it was not a van, it was more of a pickup, and the section behind us there were bodyguards with guns, so that really bothered me. But anyway, we traveled quite I think 30 minutes from the main center, and then we got to this area, and it was a very rural, very small area, but they were celebrating the fiesta, no? Very simply, but still they had these dances, there were performances, there was a singing contest that we were asked to judge, no, on the fly, like, oh yes, you can judge the contest. So that was actually very fun. In only the beginning, um, uh, for Prom the Heart, actually, we wanted to do an anthology of stories that was set in the provinces, no? And when I was thinking of something to write about, one of the editors, Ines, was telling me, "Oh, you're assigned Mindanao," no, because you already wrote about Mindanao before. You're doing Mindanao again because we want to have the representation. If you look at Prom the Heart, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao are all represented in that book. So in the story, it actually features cameos of Rina and Tony, who are the characters in the earlier story I told you about, and even the priest, Father Danny. So the heroine of the story in From the Heart is Andy, and she is actually Tony's, the vice mayor's niece. And in the beginning, she gets into kind of an embarrassing situation with Martin, who is part of a team from Manila who are going to undertake cultural heritage mapping of Jimenez. And I think I there's this picture of me talking to people in Jimenez, no, and that was the scene I was envisioning when I wrote that opening. No, there are people from Manila talking about a project, and in the room there are people from Jimenez listening to them. No, and there's sort of this the sort of pressure, that sort of moment that's in the opening. But I also think that, as I said previously, I think each place has its own character, and I try as much as possible to weave that character, to put the essence of that character into the books. So in the stories, I mention a lot of sensorial experiences. So not only the sites, no, the places and the sites that are location specific, but also the smells, the humidity of the air, the glare of the sun, the sounds that you hear. No, I remember there's a scene in Dare to Love that I mentioned something about the quality of sunlight in Ilocos, because they take a road trip to Ilocos to visit the Church of Santa Maria, and I mentioned that I think it's the glare is really different from what we're experiencing in Manila. It's still the Philippines, it's still Luzon, but the glare is more punishing than what we have. So, and I also talk a lot about food. Yeah, those who know me will not be surprised. But in Sweeter by the Second, I mentioned suman and torta, which I ate a lot of. I even brought back a whole box of it to Manila, and my mom loved me for it. But I think as Filipinos know, this is really our love language. And usually when I travel, I'm hosted by um, either the local government, the tourism division takes us around. No, this is the scene I was talking about a while ago. I was giving an introduction to the project for members of the community. So they always want you to experience what they have. So I sometimes our host is also the parish. So it's either the local government or the parish, and they love to feed us. Yeah, and this is my audience. Now they were listening so intently, and yeah, when I was looking at these pictures, I was imagining the scene from the opening in From the Heart. Anyway, when as I said, all of these people love to feed us. They love to feed us because it's part of their culture, and they kind of want us to experience being in their place. And it's even detrimental to our work because sometimes they would feed us a full meal, and then they would say, and of course you're sleepy because of all the food, right? And you'd be inspecting the roof, and then not even 2 hours afterward, they'd be, architect, baba na kayo, it's time for merienda, come back to the convento. And I'm like,
The
we
best.
haven't gotten started. I'm not complaining, like, because the spread is always generous. They feed us a lot, but teka po, we're here to work. So it's specific. The food is specific. The people are very specific. The ugali is different.
Thank you so much. So when we planned this podcast, we were like, yeah, let's talk about the places that that you've written about, and then like maybe we'll do pictures. But I kind of wasn't prepared for for the emotional journey. Like it actually feels like because it's been a while since we've traveled, diba? So parang it really feels like parang wow, we've missed out on so much, but the places are still there, diba? They're still there. Ang nangyari, we haven't been able to visit, and we shouldn't because it's not safe. Or we might be putting people at risk. But it's really about what I think we can actually help people learn about these places when we write. And it's so wonderful, like the details that you've been sharing, because there is like a way to it is possible for people to read one book from one country and think that's it. They've experienced the Philippines, but actually that's not true at all. And even if there are commonalities where, for example, like we all like write about food in some way, it's a different kind of food. It's a different kind of experience, and a different kind of like what you choose to put in the book. It's really different from what I would choose and what Chris Mariano would choose and everyone else writing about the thing. So I guess that's the thing we want to encourage, like these little things that you think nobody cares about, or like, you know, nobody has ever talked about this. Why would I take the time to put it in a book? So it's all of this, like just the feelings that we were getting with Chris and Karen explaining all of these details and showing us what they look like. Ah, that's so amazing. Love it. Yes, we miss traveling and we have food happiness. Thank you. So if you're in the comments, we will do a Q&A later. So if you have questions, you can just put it in the comment section and then we can ask each other. Maybe we'll also ask you what we can do to sort of encourage this, like writing about yes, the suman is different. We have opinions about best suman. I'm not just gonna eat any kind of suman. I'm sorry, but I have favorites. Okay. Okay, so we just have a few more questions in the program and then we'll cover your questions soon. Next up, something I would like to ask. When we make our romance novels home, a specific town or city that isn't Manila, does this change the cast of characters in your story? Who is included, who might not have been included before? So this is kind of abstract, so you can go abstract if you want to answer it, or you can go specific. Like so this question was brought about by thinking about writing Manila or writing the non-Manila setting as not just a setting, but the everything about the story could possibly change just because you've changed the setting. So maybe it's not just about the setting, but it's also about the people. So how about Chris? Can you tell us something about this, like the people that are now included when you change a story setting?
I I really like that we were going to talk about this. My short answer to the question is yes, but I don't think that tells the whole story. You know, instead of changing the cast, I think what setting does is it influences who can show up in your story and what they bring with them when they do show up. Certain characters that may feel more at home in the city might need a little more explanation or a little more context if you decide to put them in a rural setting. For instance, an Adjumart may not look out of place in BGC or Clark or even Boracay or all these places where there are a lot of Koreans and Korean tourists. But if I decide to put that in Kalibo, then I might want to give it a little more context. But also, just because it isn't common doesn't mean it can't ever exist or it can't ever happen. So I think that when we decide, when we're thinking about who we want to show up, who we want to put in our stories, if we're whenever we're considering characters and things that seem specific to a place, I would also caution that we should check our assumptions about certain things. More than the kind of stock character that we will probably expect to see in the story, more than the job that they have or more than their role in the town. I think what setting really influences is the kind of mindset that these characters would have. A Manila character might not react the same way to the same stimulus as somebody else who lives in a small town. And but also again, while characters may react differently and while their experiences may be markedly different, I think certain things and certain issues are still pretty universal. Things like insecurity and a need for independence or loneliness or self doubt. I think these things are pretty universal, and and it's not likely to be experienced by one group more than the other. So that's my long answer now.
Thank you, Chris. How about you, Karen?
So I think I agree. No, people are different. It's not only the setting. It's you can't plunk a Bolanon and put him in, for example, in Silay. In for example, just to illustrate. No, I was showing my friend who's Ilongga a book of my son, and it said in that Abaling Panlipunan book that Tiyaya is from Iloilo. It's the main product of Iloilo. And she went into this whole, and I'm like, no, it's not from Iloilo. It's from Negros. Like, and people are protective about that. No, so when you write about people, no, it takes to under it pays to understand, the psyche, the history of that people, why they are like that. Um, what their hugot is. Now their hugot is different from the Manila hugot. As I said, the ugali, the way that people interact is different. In the provinces, the communities are smaller, and people tend to know everyone. No, it doesn't mean that everyone is friendly. It just means that, yeah, people usually know your business because it's a small community, and that's how they work. The priorities are very different also. The things that we hold important in Manila might not be the same thing. The sense of humor is different. No, they find things, different kinds of things funny. It's generally more laid back, but it's not safe to assume that everyone is laid back. Everyone is still their own person. But when I'm writing about people, when I'm kind of like designing my character, I tend to base it on people I know who are from that area. No? And I make it a point actually to check the surnames that are common in a specific province. For example, a friend told me that in Iloilo, the first name of your surname is the first letter of the town where you originally came from. So if your name is Lebata, you're from Lambuna, or if your name is Sabanal, you're from San Miguel or something. And I'm very careful about that, especially when I wrote about Jimenez. I usually take and Jimenez and Laguna. No, I take note of the names of the people in that town. Usually, I can find a list of past mayors, barangay officials, parish officials. These are often published somewhere. No, I find them usually in the barangay hall or the municipal hall, or even in Wikipedia. There's a list of that, just so you're not your character is very specific to that place. I also like to look at the history. No, I'm kind of a history buff, so I like to look at the history of the people and what happened in this setting. No, what they are proud of, because they're proud of something. And if you write about that place and you don't mention this thing that is very specific to that place, it feels pilit. It feels foreign. It feels that it's not really um, the real setting. So yes to writing people in yes to writing stories in different settings, but also we have to understand that settings are more than places. They also affect the people that we include in our stories.
Thank you, Karen. I love what you said about what, like, first of all, looking at what surnames are common, because yes, a Filipino surname is not necessarily a surname you will see in every single city or every single town. These are very specific, and there's a historical, like, there's a history to our surnames, whatever they happen to be. And yeah, so yes, if you've been writing Filipino characters and Philippine setting, you'll end up doing this. You'll end up looking up what's an appropriate surname for this kind of person if they're from this kind of place. Definitely. I also love what you said, that they're like, look at what they're proud of, because I think that really, more than, because we write romance, so we are in the genre of writing about more of what makes people happy and what makes people like proud in not just about uh, where they are, but essentially what they do. So it's not, we're not really in a particular like genre of looking for people's issues or trauma or or that. So it does look like it is a good tip to look at what people are proud of. And you've both showed us pictures of festivals like fiestas in the towns and the cities, because that's the thing that people look forward to. And it's not just there for tourists to visit. It's the thing that they do to that's the thing they look forward to, the thing that they do, and what I'm sure what they're an expert in after years and years of doing this. So that's awesome. So my last question for the program before we go to the Q&A is what settings or aspects of life do you want to see more of in romance books? Do you have tips for authors who want to write these? So you've done several stories. You've encountered like what you needed to do and what you didn't have time to put in. What what else would you want to see? And if it doesn't, and it doesn't have to be a thing that you can do, maybe somebody else can do it. Chris?
A couple of years ago, I started on a story that's set in a it's set in Kalibo, and it's a story that's centered around a beauty pageant, and that's something I've always kind of wanted to see. I don't think I'm trying very hard to try to finish that, but if that shows up in somebody else's book in centered around some other festival, I would totally be up for reading that. I'm also kind of looking forward to seeing more of these fish out of the water stories. We don't see it a lot. We see it in small town romances from more Western media, but I don't think I see that too often in our romance stories. That's something that I look forward to reading about. I want to see how characters can react and how characters can adapt to a particular way of life. I think that's all that always brings a lot of conflict and a lot of drama that I'm totally up for. But I think that beyond setting stories in the provinces or outside of Manila, I think that what I'm really looking forward to is just seeing more characters who bring with them that heritage, that not everyone has to be Laking Manila. We set our stories in Manila, and that's fine because that's something that we're familiar with. But maybe not all of our characters have to be born and raised here. Maybe we can bring some of their dialects to the page. Maybe we can introduce some of their beliefs, and create some of those. I think doing this adds a lot of authenticity to the characters that we make. In one of our more recent anthologies, which is the Troptastic Bundle, I wrote about a group of friends, Barkada, and they're all from Aklan. And one thing that I wanted to show there was how the youngest among them called everyone Manong and Manang, even if they were out of school there, even if they weren't related. And that's something that I've always seen in our school kids in Aklan, how everyone is Manong and Manang to them. I guess similar to how the Japanese would address the other classmen would address their upperclassmen as senpai, or in Korean dramas, the hube, the sonbe. Um, we actually have a little of that, going on in our own towns, in our own culture. We just don't really see it because it's called a different name, and it's attached to a more family kind of setting. So things like that, I think I find that really curious. I mean, I'm curious about things like that, and I find that really exciting. And I hope I see more of that in our romance stories. And as for tips, as far as tips are concerned, I mentioned earlier, one is to check our assumptions when we're writing. I really believe that, you know, we tend to bring our biases whenever we write, and it's really good to make sure that when we're a little more sensitive and we're more respectful whenever we try to write outside of what we know. um as I mentioned earlier, maybe we think that this may not be a good fit for this particular thing, but if we just try to open our minds and make sure that we approach our writing with an open mind, then maybe things can really come together. Another thing that I think I want to say is to echo what Karen also said earlier, which is to research. I did the same kind of research when I was doing uh, cover story girl, where I had to really go and look into names of governors and names of mayors, just to make sure that when I write my own, it's not it's not similar to anyone who's ever lived before. Um, so and also she mentioned earlier paying attention to the surnames, because my stories are set in Calibo, and Calibo used to be a province of Capiz. We kind of share that, you know, you can tell where a person is from based on the surname. Certain surnames are from certain areas. I was also very, very conscious of that when I was writing, whenever I'm writing about a clan. So those, I guess, are my things. Research, do your research, check your assumptions, and then be respectful and be sensitive. That's it.
Thank you, Chris. How about you, Karen?
Okay, so my thing is, I like to write about cultural workers, no, because probably because I'm part of that, no. I recently realized I enjoy writing about architects a lot because I sometimes when I see them portrayed in media, and that's not the experience that uh, that's not my own experience, and it's kind of over the top for me. So I tend to write about the different aspects of it, and the places that I've seen, but also um, I really wanted uh, to see more of the South in the stories. No, it would be nice to see more of the South, Cebu, Bohol, Dumaguete, Davao, Samar Leyte. I mean, I there was this idea brewing in my head about a surfer girl in Giwan in Eastern Samar. It's one of the prettiest places, really, in Samar. No, Giwan is an absolute gem. So, and I was thinking about that, no, um, surfer girl thing, because I actually know of someone who moved back, because of the pandemic and everything, and that's also something to think about, no. Um, Sometimes when I write about a place, I'm very conscious that I am not from there, no, and I want to make sure that the representation is right. So usually, like for example, in when I wrote about Jimenez, there was always an aspect of someone from Manila, you know. So in my case, it wasn't she. Rena, for example, wasn't there on a vacation. She was there because she had to work, and I know of this because my work takes me to different places, and it 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 was so I incorporated that. It's a work thing. No, it's also um, what are the different things that take us to different places in the Philippines? Sometimes it's not only work, it's not only vacation. Sometimes we're forced to move there because maybe of the job of our parents, maybe because of school and things, no? So we have our own adoptive places. And when Chris mentioned a while ago about stories in Manila don't only have to contain Manileños. That really struck me. No, that's right, because I know of people who speak Bisaya who are not Bisaya, and when I they spoke it very well. I was like, how did you learn that when you're not from there? She was a Batangueña, and she said, oh, because my dorm mates uh, at the university before, no, they were all from the Visayas. So she kind of picked it up, and when you hear her, she really speaks it well. And oh man, no, it's kind of presumptuous for us to assume that since our stories are set in Manila, they're all from Manila. Parang yeah, that's something that we also should consider. But uh, also when what do you call this? It really helps that we visit the places that we write about. Although in this setting, no, it's kind of different. It's kind of difficult to do that because yes, let's stay at home and let's keep everybody safe. But if you do know when you get a chance to travel, I really encourage you to do to if especially if you want to write a book someday, you know, to take your trip as a part of your research, you know, and to really study the place, to talk to the people, get to know them, get to observe them, their quirks, what do they find funny, the kind of jokes, no? Like for example, in one book, I mentioned Tocino. You know, I the one of the characters was surprised because Tocino, which is favorite breakfast staple, was not available in Jimenez. And this only came to be because one of the people I worked with there, she was like, Architect, the next time you come back, can you bring me some tocino? I was like, sure, why? Why tocino? It's like, there's no tocino here. And that floored me, like, talaga, there's no tocino here. And I thought every place in the Philippines had tocino. And yeah, it was kind of presumptuous of me to think so. So yeah, I brought her tocino and I put that in the story because yeah, these are things that people have to uh, be aware of. And we're always wondering why do people in like on the plane they're always bring these boxes of Goldilocks of all of these brands that are available in Metro Manila exactly because they are not available in the provinces. And people who are coming back to the provinces would like to give their family a taste of these things. So when you eat the food, make sure that it's local food and appreciate the sites, not only the touristy ones, but also the different aspects, the places that affect the different aspects of life, waiting sheds, the schools, the uniforms, um, the way that people cross the street, things like that. The little things, I think, the details would be, and that would be my tip for anyone who would want to write these stories. No, pay attention to the details because they're there, and it in incorporation of these details in our stories makes us feel seen. No, so it gives us a good feeling. It's a small detail, but if it's in the story, it makes us feel seen. It's like yay. So it matters. No, it's not only the setting. It's the ogale. It's pointing with your mouth. It's all of these things that give your story this kind of flavor, that give it life. So please take note of that and try to incorporate those in the stories that you write.
And Karen, if I may add, you
Sure.
mentioned um, how it's nice to see the details in our stories. Sometimes when we do our research, sometimes they don't even have to show up in our stories, but
True. It
having
doesn't show up.
that right, having that understanding that the distance between one town to the other takes this long, that
Mhm.
makes that contributes to how you're writing the story.
It
Maybe it's
affects the way you
suddenly
write.
inconvenient for this guy to go all the way there because
True.
45 minutes in Aklan is not the same 45 minutes that you spend in traffic in Manila. Things like these little decisions suddenly affect the scenes that you choose to put in your story. For instance, in Kalibo, we don't have a cinema anymore, and I've
Mhm.
actually had to go 4 hours and a half to Iloilo just to watch a movie without
Wow.
telling anyone.
That's
But
a
things
date.
like that,
That is a
it,
date story.
That is
exactly.
wow.
You don't you suddenly you can't tell, you can, if you're setting it and you're trying to be authentic about it, you're trying to set it in a place like Kalibo where they don't have that, suddenly maybe your date story isn't a quick drive to the cinemas, but
A
a
whole
road
day
trip.
affair
Exactly.
for one movie. My gosh.
For one movie,
So
I told them I was buying something
Wow.
else. I did not tell them I was going to Iloilo
to watch a movie.
to watch a movie. And I
So
came back at night.
That is
thank you.
true.
Thank you
Yeah.
for that. And thank you actually for reminding me of certain things. Again, as someone who writes mostly from Manila and writes Manila characters, but first of all to check my assumptions, and that's true. That we we do we actually have friction. Manileños will have friction with the rest of the Philippines if you make certain assumptions about anything, really, right? So that's something that we need to be aware of when we write. Like we cannot make assumptions when we write about just assuming things. Like, so if we write, if we bring our characters in our book, uh, if they're Manileño and have always been Manileño, and if they travel and go to other places as tourists, I think that's one thing we need to be aware of, that they are experiencing that place as a tourist. So we need to, I guess, be clear about that, that this is not actually, this is that city or that province. So that is it is that, but as a tourist would, as a visitor or a guest would experience it. This is not how a local would go through it. This is not us saying that this is exactly the experience of the place. It is really just a trip, like going and experiencing it in one way. And I'm getting flashbacks of trips that I've that I've been on where I'm obviously not from there, and they all know it, and that affects everything from the way they talk to you to how much things are when you ask them and you're not speaking in the local language. They really will. uh, it's all of that. So when you're not from there, they engage with you in a totally different way. So we kind of have to be aware of that when we write. And then the other thing I'm glad that that I was reminded of is just that when you do research and when you experience something, exactly like when you visit a place and then they feed you, you are a guest. So this generosity, this is almost like a performance. This is something that they do. This is everything. This is everything that they pull out for somebody important, or for somebody they love, or for somebody who isn't there very often. This isn't yet what daily life is like, and you kind of need to spend more time there to really discover what they really think of you, and what they really how they really treat their friends. Anyway, that was just a lovely reminder that there's so much to learn actually. So that's I really appreciate it. And I wish that I knew more languages. I think we should do a podcast episode about the languages that that we should probably be featuring in our books, because yes, I think that's the great thing that I pick up when I read your books and all the books that are not set in Manila, because you pick up something. And of course, if you've only ever really experienced it like driving by or as a tourist, these things will shock you or surprise you. And it's good to actually learn how things are. Yes, so we have comments. Thank you so much. Parang nagre-reminisce tayo in the comments uh, about food and everything. So I'm surprised pala that there's no tocino. That is so that would freak me out, because my
I was
favorite
so surprised.
my favorite breakfast thing is tocino. So yeah. Yeah. So I actually met Georgette. Georgette commented now. That's how I learned Ilocano and Bisaya. I picked them up from people conversing around me. And I actually met Georgette when I visited Dumaguete, because she was living there. and she said, "Let's meet." And I said, "Sure." And we actually met in Dumaguete, so that's great. And as actually you were talking, and as everyone's mentioning where they're from, I'm starting to remember romance class pitches for novels that didn't finish. So these people joined the class and then didn't actually finish, but they got through to either pitch or outline stage. And there are unfinished books out there that are set in Baguio, in Pampanga, in in Cebu, in all of these places. So I actually wish that these to answer the question that you had, I wish that these things get picked up. I wish that the authors would continue and realize that we need this. We want this actually. We want the kind of world building. I say world building even though it's real world, but the kind of world building that we are able to do when there are so many books set in one place. I wish that for all of the places, so you don't feel like you're the only person writing about that city in romance, but chances are you might be. So please, I hope that more people will do that. So how about we'll go to the Q&A, but first let me remind everyone to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's kilig.pub/YouTube. And if you're here, I hope you've subscribed already. And just hit subscribe. And then there's a bell that you can tap so you can be reminded when we have another video out. So how about some questions from the chat? I've seen that there are questions. Let's pull something up. From KB. Hi, KB. What does your decision-making process look like when choosing to use or alter specific details about the place you chose for your story? So I think you touched on this a little in an earlier in like earlier answers, but do you have like, is there a particular thing that makes you decide to alter instead of be completely authentic to the place?
I can
Uh,
respond to this particular question. One thing that I really try to alter is when it comes to the political stuff.
okay.
Or writing about people, actually writing about people. If place markers I feel like are fine, I don't really change much of those. I try to be as close to a particular landmark as I can if I don't mention it as it actually is. But when it comes to people, and I feel like when I'm patterning somebody after somebody else, I really try to make sure I research about who it is first, and then go somewhere else. Because I write about Calibo, or small towns or small places, where everyone, like Carrie mentioned earlier, everyone knows everyone. I know Calibo is the capital. It's still a third class municipality, but is it a third class municipality? But anyway, it is um it is you don't want to run into the trouble of somebody seeing it and saying, "Way that sounds like so and so," way this particular person sounds like her sister-in-law's cousin. You just don't want to a friend picking it up and saying, "Hey, this is me," or "This is my drama." That's not. I mean, that's something that I try to avoid when I'm. That's something I try to alter when I'm writing about my town.
Yes, Tanya, there are classes of municipalities.
Yes, there are. There are. Oh my gosh. There are. Anyway, to answer that question also, no, I second what Chris said about um in my case, no, it was not the political thing, but more of the process thing. I mentioned a lot about national agencies in my book, and I was telling my the people I work with about the book. And I was like, I wrote about our time in Bohol, and there's yeah, and the agencies were there. They're loosely mentioned. I don't mention anything by name, but and they were like, oh, um, what did you do? And I said, in my book, everything works. The financial aid comes and it's distributed, and the agencies are cooperating with everybody else. And yeah, they already have a framework, they develop a framework and they stick to it. And my mentor
That's
was
the
like,
fantasy.
I fiction nga. He was like, I fiction nga. No, but because I didn't want to write about something problematic. I want to write about something that should happen. And I was saying that I don't want to write about that because yeah, it's not what should be. So I wrote about something that was supportive, about agencies supporting each other and all of that. So that was when I kind of tweak things in my world building. Also for example, when I wrote about Dare to Love, I wanted it to be in Pila, but the church was technically in San Pablo. So I said, okay, I'll not mention the town na lang. I'll just say it's in Laguna. But when I was thinking about it, it was there. It was basically I transferred the church of San Pablo to Pila. So yeah, sorry about
So
that.
you
But
were
yeah,
thinking, you just moved an entire church.
I just moved an entire church. Yeah, I'm sorry.
But that's interesting that you would even like that would even be something you would worry about, because there are people who do world building where they absolutely don't care where if there's a church out of nowhere, or yeah. And then what you mentioned about changing things for the sake of making sure that it works. Yeah, I mean, that is, I think again, just to remind people listening of the genre that we write, there it is it we don't write like exposés of of the incompetence of agencies, even though we have opinions on all of it. But we do write romance, and I think if it suits your story, that these things work, but also it suits your story that certain things don't work, because I can imagine conflict areas that can be that where certain things can happen because they need your character. Then yeah, those are the things I think we can play with when we're when we're changing things. But that's so interesting though, that everything works, and that's what that's what you've changed.
And that's what
That's
makes
so
it
funny.
fiction.
Yeah.
That is, yeah, but it's the no, it's for me, it's more of like the ideal. Let's move toward that, please. Something like that,
I
right?
think we need that. Yeah, I think we need that. And I want to mention to you, Karen, specifically because I would give talks in schools and talk about our books. And then one particular class that I talked to was one of the first batches of senior high school. So I think it's probably like at an age where they're very career minded because of just how senior high school is set up. So I mentioned that we have books where this book is a conservation architect, and somebody actually said, may ganon pala dito. And and I think it's so interesting that what like these things that we just decide to do, or like you deciding to write this career that you have and you're interested in and you want to actually talk about, is actually letting some people know on the other side that it actually exists. And and again, we shouldn't make assumptions, because I think one of the assumptions, like if we are not to make assumptions about uh those other cities that we don't usually write about, I think international readers shouldn't make assumptions when reading us, because they might not realize that we have conservation architects, we have scientists, we have museum curators in lovely little in lovely little museums. It's just all of these things are letting people know exactly that we exist and these things exist. So yeah, any other questions from the chat? Favorite food from your travels? Oh my gosh, laban. So if
This
you're
is such a
seeing the
difficult
background,
question.
yeah, if you're seeing in our background, we have like alita lechon and puto with cheese and halo halo. So, um, I think I think one interesting thing, if you're going to do like the whole like traveling thing, I'm trying to remember because it's so easy to eat good food when you travel. I can't even so now it's really just remembering what you did there. But I actually like the differences in halo halo per place that I've been to, because like La Union halo halo is different, Cebu, Boracay, um so they'll usually add something that usually you try it and then there's something different. And it's probably like, I think in Cebu I've had halo halo with mangoes, and it's so it's one of those things that I find interesting. So how about you, Chris? Best food from your travels ever?
It's such a hard question, but I really love vegan longanisa. I never had it until I got vegan. My idea of longanisa was the sweeter kind that we usually get. But when I went to Ilocos, I went and had vegan longanisa on the way. That was I think life changing for me. I've always kept on looking for that next time.
So it's
And
a like a saltier kind,
mhm,
right? It's not
yep,
it's a saltier, it's a garlicky. Is that
garlicky. Yes, that's
it's
that one. Yes.
garlicky, it's
Mhm,
saltier. So yeah, and when we talk about longganisa,
yes.
there's like an association with like red sweet um sausage type thing. But yeah, so
Right.
vegan longganisa is actually saltier, it's garlicky, and it's small.
Oh
it's
yes.
it's small.
Thank you. In the chat, Tanya just said vegan, the
Not to
place.
be confused
Not
with
vegan.
vegan longanisa. That's
Lebanese,
right.
exactly. Yes.
It
That
probably does
that
exist now.
distinction must be made.
Very different.
Yes, it is a meat longanisa. Yeah, thank you, Chris. How about you, Karen? Best
Okay,
food?
this is such a difficult question. Wow. Okay. Um, Actually, when I was browsing pictures to send to Tanya for today's session, I stumbled upon this picture of a dish that I had in Osamis. It was Osamis is where is the airport, no, and then you take a 2 hour ride to Jimenez. So we usually stay in Osamis, and then we do that commute to Jimenez during the day. And there was this one place, no, it was me and my assistant, and we didn't know where to eat, and we asked the driver, parang, Manong, where's a nice place to have dinner? It's like, ma'am, I know this place. And he brought us to this place. I can't even remember the name, but they served us what is called sinuglao. Parang sinuglao. It's a combination of sinugba, which is ihaw, which is roasted something, no? And kinilaw. So it's sinugba, it's roasted pork with kinilaw. And they serve it together, and it's really mind blowing that the next trip we asked to be taken there again. My assistant, let's go back there, and he was even like, ma'am, let's not have dinner here, so we can have dinner again in that place. Like, yes, let's go. It was really good. So that was our thing. We have to, whenever we go there, we have to eat that twice at least. And it's not I know it's not healthy. It's not healthy, but it's super good.
Yeah, so there's a comment from Kat. Hi, Kat. I love asking the locals saan best kumain. Yes, and ideally, somebody from there is going to take you. So we've experienced this before. I've experienced this before as a tourist. Pero sometimes, kasi if you ask a tourism person, like somebody in the hotel, they have assumptions then about you. Like what, as a tourist, like maybe you won't like eating certain things, or maybe so you kind of have to lay it out and say you're willing to try like the real stuff. Like what do you really like? So yeah, because there are, I mean, any place that has a tourist industry will have these places that cater to tourists talaga and not locals. So you're still not getting the experience. So
Actually,
okay,
if I could comment just on what Jet commented, boiled bananas and then with bagoong. I was made to try this because, ma'am, this is our merienda. I'm like, but it was actually good. So
Okay,
it's
boiled
surprising.
saba
Boiled saba,
and
and then you dip
with
it in
ginam.
ginamos, which is not exactly bagoong, but it's more of the patis like
It's yeah.
So
bagoong.
so it's savory. I mean, in the end, it's savory.
This this
How am
the
I to
saltiness the
to
saltiness of the
comprehend this?
ginamos
Uh-huh.
will kind of cut through the sweetness of your saba. So
Okay.
that's a common, and as Karen mentioned, it's a common merienda dish. I don't like it, but that's a personal preference. But it's really common. It's as common as just eating the bananas as they are.
Okay. One experience that I can share is I didn't this was not food in travels, but somebody from Bicol brought to I work with her. She brought to the office Bicol Express the way they do it, not the way not the way people in Manila do it, which is like 1% the 1% the heat of so it's really intense, but but they want to share that, they want to be able to, and you have to experience that in that way, or just warn people if for food or for health reasons you absolutely cannot, but they will kind of like decide that maybe you're not ready. So I also love actually the food in homes. So if you visit uh like one the travel that I did to Bacolod, I actually stayed at the home of a friend. So it was her tita cooking for us, and this is one of those things when I said every meal was like a huge spread of, like, on a buffet table, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, three types of ulam, dessert, everything. Um, yes, Bicol Express the Bicolano way. It's just fire in your mouth. That's right. Um, so in Bacolod, they would do that, and they would really serve a lot of food. And we were like, you don't have to do this for us. We're ready to go out and eat in a restaurant. And they said, no, that's just the way it is every day here. Oh, okay. Like, so- okay, so we weren't imposing pala. Yun. So, but the food that the kind of food they were serving was really, it's lovely, and they would buy like even just the like, what do you think about the one product, one town, one product products? Like, do they actually get to pick like the best thing? Do you- yeah, do you actually like when a town is known for this particular pasalubong, is that like a safe bet?
That's actually a thing though, because when I travel, I usually buy pasalubong, to bring home. But sometimes the locals, because the LGU, the government or whoever our host is, would actually give us pasalubong to bring home. That's kind of
Oh,
their
nice.
thing. They would actually ask us, architect, don't forget get luggage with your plane, no, because sometimes we usually get the carry on lang, and then, no, pay for luggage. Why? We're sending something, we're giving you something. And they would give us boxes of suman, boxes of mangoes. And when I would say, what's the product here, no, I heard you're known for this, I don't buy that, let's buy from this. And it's
Okay.
they'll bring us to a small place. This is where they get it. This is the same as the airport, but this is fresher. Okay,
Okay.
they're the supplier. Okay, sure. So yeah, it depends who you're talking to, because they yeah, it's usually commercialized.
And they
The like Bicol Express
so
is
your
pang
real
Manila.
friends, yeah,
Yes,
so
your
your real
real friends will
friends
take
will,
you to the real places.
yeah. So I think we have another question. Can we bring that up? Is From Jay. Hi, Jay. Is there a certain place or thing specific to a place that you're excited to write about in your next work? Something, how, is there something in the next thing that you definitely would like to add? In the,
There is.
ilaglag na yung next thing.
There is, kaya lang sana kaya lang it's not in the Philippines, but yeah, it's kind of yeah, it's a very site specific thing. Ayoko na, no, it's too much. Okay, okay, but yeah,
Okay.
in the Philippines, in the
Uh,
Philippines, I really want to write about Jimenez again. Para three stories siya, but I haven't
Oh.
decided yet. Because so far I've written two. I want to write one other thing, but I don't know what it's about pa. So yeah, something to think about.
ah, how about you, Chris?
I always have a lot of works in progress. I'm so not the quickest writer, but I've got a ton of works in progress, and almost all of them, if not, I think all of them are set in Kalibo, or set in Aklan. And one thing that I've started writing, and I wish I could continue writing, is a about a family that lives close to the airport. They're in their house is in the middle of a rice field that's really close to the airport.
Mm.
And that's and I like that research. I mean, the research part of doing that was, I had friends who lived close to the airport, and I would always be there, and pay attention to what the lights look like at night, from the airport tower, from the, I don't know what you call that particular tower, but things like that. So that was something that I really looked forward to when I was writing, and I actually still am, but I just kind of stopped writing that particular thing. Another thing
We'll
that I
consider it.
was
We'll consider
hoping
it a present,
a present.
current work in progress.
There's also something that was going to try out for. I mean, I know it's not a Flickr title, but it's a YA book that's set in Kalibo, that that has to do with funeral beliefs, funeral um yeah, the pamahiins that we have. Maybe not exciting, given that that context, but it's something that I really enjoyed. The research part is always interesting. The enjoying the researching is what I mean
Yes.
to say, and not enjoying the actual content.
Dagdag ko lang dun sa you mentioned an airport. So we used to eat in the dampa in Parañaque near the airport. So it's so yun, that's the place where you order food that's fresh from the market, and then go to a, and then someone there will cook it for you, and then you wait. um and then you eat it there. So when I was younger and we would go there, that was where we used to go when it was somebody's birthday, or just when we wanted like good food. And we would have bets like how many planes would pass over us before the food was served. So sa table, like six, somebody would say six, somebody would say 10, somebody would say 15, and then somebody would win some nonsense prize. Because, but we would do that at the dampa near the airport
That's
there.
so interesting. That's not something that you can do anywhere else.
Yeah.
It has to be that particular place.
I
That's so
don't even
nice.
know if other families do it, but we did it. So that was like the thing, because this was pre like everybody having their phone. And if you were waiting
You had to
45
invent
minutes,
games.
yeah, if you were waiting 45 minutes to an hour for all of your food to be cooked, you had to do something. And we were doing that. We were waiting for airplanes and counting them. So yeah, that's what we did back in the day. Airport specific. But I actually see when people talk about airports, yeah, like they're, because depending on on where they are. They're very unique. Like they're like some are too close to the water, some are too close to just all of these stories. Yeah, so it's wonderful. I think again these are unexpected stories. Like they're probably not the first setting that you would think of, but they do bring like a unique thing to the story. So yeah, thanks for asking, Jay. Yeah, ang dami nating reminiscing about pagkain and about places. So in the comments, if you're watching this on YouTube and you're looking at the comments, you're seeing recommendations about banana recipes that I have never heard of before. So I did not realize that there are things going on here with bananas. Okay. I am going to maybe try some of them. Are these bananas are these saba or lakatan? I'm guessing these are saba. Oh. I'm guessing these are not like the bananas you just eat. I'm surprised about bananas with bagoong. I don't know. I don't know, friends. I wanna,
It was
I'm
an
gonna
experience.
I'm gonna think about that.
And people,
Okay,
when they
saba.
served it, they were looking at, will she try it? Will she try it? She tried
Oh
it, and
no,
then
is it real?
yes, yes, and they will really wait for your reaction. Yes, is it good? Like, it's okay.
I love this. I think we should do another episode where we just show pictures of food
Food, mango ketchup. Wow, Chris.
and talk about a show and tell of all the food that we've encountered just being here and going around. So I think we got our last question. And we covered everything in the program. So, of course, that's not everything, and this is not all that we can talk about regarding this topic. We definitely encourage you, uh, if you're an author listening to this, if you're a reader listening to this, definitely write and and make like a conscious choice to read books with settings that are not the usual, because this is really what we want to do. We really want to talk about where we are and who we are. And sometimes it's not going to be, it can't be just the job of one person. So we have to encourage other authors to do what they want to do and be able to write this and be able to say that there are people who are going to read it. Yeah, and I love because I don't know if it's a thing with romance class, but a lot of you like to eat and a lot of you like to travel. So I don't know what that's about, if it's us or if it's like a trait uh among writers, among Filipinos. I don't know really, but this is a thing that keeps showing up in our books, that I think we should like encourage each other to really like do more of it. So thank you to our panel. So we will have the links to Chris's books in the description, and Karen's books in the description. I also put them up on a Twitter thread talking about this. I will retweet that so that you can check out the books and the stories that we talked about. And I hope that you will read more and write more and eat more. And when we can travel, we will definitely do that when everything is safe. So thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the bell so that you can be notified when we have a next episode. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Karen. And have a great weekend.
Thank you and goodbye.